Greetings, salutations, and good how to do. My name is Fabian Thomas, and this is the first installment of what I'm calling Ting a ling the COVID 19 online school bell ring. And my original idea was for it to be a radio show, and that may or may not happen, but I've decided to go ahead and record this and share it. It may end up being a podcast as well. I used to have a podcast before and I've forgotten all of how to upload things as a podcast. So I said, let me just record this and get it out there. So my idea for this ting-a-ling-a-ling is to be not just an opinion piece, but sharing information, troubleshooting, and resources as we navigate this very new, unfamiliar territory of online schooling. It's just the norm. It's just the reality. It's a pandemic. The covidity of it all. No one has a script for this, and that's one of the things. When the new term was starting, I had made a post online saying, I hope that for Jamaica, but also the rest of the world, that we show up with the best of ourselves, with as much grace and patience and respect for each other, because this is unprecedented. There's no magic bullet, there's no magical solution, and there's no perfection. This is unscripted. This is really a reality show. And so there's a lot of people since the online thing has started clamoring to go to face. And I have to respectfully disagree. I just think this is way too dangerous, especially if we're talking about wholesale face to face teaching. It's just too dangerous, from the children getting to school, being at school, and getting back home. How we're going to make sure that they social and physical distance. If they're using public transportation, or even if they're being privately taken to school, how are teachers or people at school going to monitor all these students to make sure they're not sharing intimate space and hugging each other and touching each other and wearing the mask properly and sanitizing? That's a whole other thing. So I just think it's way too dangerous. Are there issues and challenges? Most definitely. Let's not kid ourselves about that. But here's what I think this is real. This is a pilot. This term, as I see it, is trial and error. This is make we see where really are going and sort it out. This is also acknowledging that it's not a level playing field. Some schools with resources and support are way more prepared than others. Schools with better leadership and more teamwork are also probably more prepared, and some schools are woefully unprepared, and so it is an unlevel playing field. But guess what? That's the norm of our educational system. That's not new. And I think one of the points I want to make is we are not going to fix the problems of the 30 odd 40 odd year old problems of our education system in 2 terms. That's just not real. So here's one of the things that COVID is doing, as it has done in other things. Situations that were off, not working, dysfunctional. Children and people who were at risk for whatever reason, those risks are made worse or heightened or made more obvious by COVID-19. And that's what's happening in the educational system right now, in our education system. So children who were at risk before, whether it was because they were coming to school intermittently, coming to school infrequently, or coming to school hungry, didn't have resources, their parents and guardians couldn't afford to buy books. Those children are still at risk and still vulnerable. So I think we have to now wrap our heads around, with the added reality of COVID-19, how are we managing and handling that? Because for a lot of these children, this risk is not new. Then there's an additional set of risks and gaps that have been made apparent, or apparent for some people. So some of us have the assumption that everybody have access to Wi-Fi. No, everybody doesn't. That's just the reality. Because even at our tertiary institutions, students who live on campus, a lot of them, that's when they have the most access. Many of them, when they go back home, they either don't have no access or intermittent access, or if they have to be in a certain space or a certain place. I know some students who went on the rooftop of an unfinished house in her community, because that's where she could get online to join her classes. So I think we have to pull back, take a breath, and review what's going on, take a serious notes of what's not working, the gaps and situations, troubleshoot as quickly as possible. Schools, administrations, everybody communicate with the parents and guardians. I'm going to suggest you have to put a new communication strategy in place. Is it that you answer emails every other day or at a certain time of day? Is there a helpline? Is there a WhatsApp space where you can respond to people in a timely manner and update people as necessary? So after you review, then you revise, and then we regroup, and the regroup may be radicalized changes or differences. But for me, it's about troubleshooting in this reality. This is going to fall heavily, of course, on schools and leadership, administration, but also schools as teams and communities. Then we also have to look at parents and guardians. Parents and guardians also have different access. There's some parents who don't know nothing about online. Them don't know nothing about no classroom or no virtual space. Whereas there are other parents who are more savvy. There are some parents who happen to be at home with their children. Some parents are not. They're at work. So who is monitoring and is there anybody at home with the skill set or the inclination to help monitor the children who are going online? We also know some families have multiple kids online. So if you have 3 children in online school and 1 instrument, how does that go work? What are some of the creative solutions until more people get access to laptops or instruments? And it might mean in those cases rotating. One child goes school online for a certain amount of hours, the other child goes another time, and you make sure we get notes and assignments. I really think we have to think outside the box and really get creative and hunker down and recognize we are really all in this together. How can schools share best practices with other schools? How can alumni now step up and step into the fray and find out, what does my alma mater need? What do you need from me? How can I help? Communities as well, looking at children who may not get online or who have whatever the issues are there some spaces in the community that have good or strong Wi-Fi where children can social distance and be in a face-to-face class? So maybe there's staggered face-to-face for some people who are really, really having access issue, but not a wholesale face-to-face. So making sure people don't fall through the cracks or further through the cracks, because there's some students who are a whole term or 2 terms behind because they weren't able to log on for any classes the term before. So even those things, how are we fixing and amending, brainstorming, talking to each other about trying to fill the gaps for students and parents and communities from the last dispensation where people couldn't get online? Laptops and Wi-Fi. So if people don't have instruments, or somebody's finding your phone isn't compatible or it's too old, and then there's some things that are out of people's control. If light go away, well, there's no Wi-Fi. If there's a power cut, if your signal is dipping, if your bandwidth isn't strong enough, all of that stuff. Even for teachers and even people working as well. Some people are using their own Wi-Fi. They're using their own electricity. They're using their own instruments to teach, and we haven't even begun to look at that in terms of compensation. What does this mean if you're using all of these things at home? So it's going to take time. I think we have to be patient. Some people are playing catch up. As I said, some people were behind from before. They're a whole term behind. So pre-COVID realities and issues and things that put people at risk, have we begun to talk about dealing with and trying to address those in a collective and realistic way? And then you add to our plate now the COVID related issues. But I really think we have to hunker down as a nation, as a people, and really just be patient with each other and recognize that for that term, this is trial and error. This is the learning curve. This is finding out what the gaps are, and also not just focusing on problems, but solutions. This is about networking, sharing information, best practices. It's about parents and guardians really rising up and becoming communities. I feel really, really blessed. I have moved on with the class that I mentor at my alma mater, Calabar. And, in the early days when the boys were in first form, rambunctious issues, personalities. Now we have melody, and it's taken time and patience and structure and a little bit of draping up, and real talk. But we're a community, so people are so supportive. If one parent doesn't get something, people share it in the group. They pass it on. If somebody don't understand how to log on to access the classroom, people are helping, because we're saying these are our boys, these are our students. This is the future of Jamaica, and we have to rally together. And so I'm gonna wrap it here. This is the first installment of Ting-a-ling-a-ling, the COVID-19 online school bell ring. And I'm gonna share it, and hopefully people will respond, ask questions, make suggestions. So this also becomes in and of itself a community, a space where we are focused in what is possible, not ignoring the gaps, not acting like things are perfect, but not the woo and the stress and the grandstanding, and as I said, suddenly thinking, oh, we're gonna wave a magic wand and in the midst of a pandemic fix what was an already broken education system. No, it's about how can we learn to start to build the new norm that will gradually take hold. And then we can also have more than one train running, have some work and some proper conversations and brainstorming and think tanks around improving our education system and access and how lessons are taught and how students are treated and how teachers are treated and the infrastructure of schools and all of those things. It's a lot. But a Jamaica, we're there. A Jamaican we name. We look about with Talawa. Let us hunker down, rally around each other, be gracious, and be solution oriented. As we get through this, these are COVID-19 times. None of we never ready for this. None of us have a precedent for this or any blueprint put on somewhere. But at the end of the day, I think our goals are the same. We want our children to be educated, to feel safe, to not be overwhelmed. We have to talk about support for students and parents. Students who the online thing don't work for them. They feel disengaged. They're more tactile. They need to be in a space. How do we balance now and try to meet those students' needs who are additionally struggling because of the online reality? We also have to look at, is online school realistic for babies, the little babies, who are sitting in front of a computer? And even that, looking at what are some of the risks now of all this computer time, this FaceTime in front of a screen for students, but also adults. A lot of us were on Zoom, we're on Google Meet all the time, and trying to balance now, what does that look like? When do we give our eyes and our brains a break? So let the children play as well. This additional pressure. And I'm going to say parents are going to need support too. Parents and guardians are going to need support and downtime. But we could push through and press through. I hope this was useful, and I said there's more to come. My name is Fabian Thomas, and this was the first installment of Ting-a-ling-a-ling, the COVID-19 online school bell ring. I hope you'll join me for further installments. Peace, love, and blessings.